Let's look at some more advanced video effects now. And in particular, we're looking at panning and zooming. So just creating a new project. And I'm going to import my butterfly clip. And I'm going to create a new sequence from that clip. And then we have our clip on our timeline. So if you click on your Effects Controls tab, and just make sure the clip is selected also. So we've got motion here. And motion effects are what we're going to use for our panning and zooming. So your zooming is controlled by the scale. So by default it's 100. And position, here is your defaults for position, but that will change depending on the clip. So position controls our panning and scale our zooming in or out. So by default we're not zoomed in at all. You also have rotation, so we won't play with that, but it's quite easy to mess around with that if you want to. And I'll just make sure it's back to 0 degrees. Okay, so let's look at, we'll look at scale first. So we're going to start actually zoomed in a little bit. So let's say 125. I find typing in the numbers is a bit better for me because I like to have exact control of how zoomed in or out we are. So we're actually zoomed in a bit more to start with. And the position, we're going to, we'll start in the bottom left. Okay, so so you can see we've got some black here because we're actually zoomed in a bit, and I've just adjusted the position so we see a bit of a black outline. Now, if we want to control our panning and zooming, we need to add keyframes. So this is our starting point now, okay? And I'm going to add a keyframe. And how do I do that? Well, I just have to click on this with the little highlight comes up here, toggle animation, tooltip is toggle animation. I click position now. Okay, that's going to keyframe, create a keyframe. It's a little bit hard to see here, it's quite small, but there is a keyframe just there. And if I click on scale now as well, that also creates a keyframe. Again, pretty hard to see here. This is a mini timeline here. So this timeline is going to be used with these keyframes to control our panning and zooming. So let's look at scale first. So we're going to start zoomed out. Sorry, we're going to start zoomed in, and then we're going to zoom out. But we want to do that progressively, not straight away. So let's move about, say there. We're going to add another keyframe. In order to have an animation, you need keyframes, like with Flash. So we've got added another keyframe at that point, and we're going to start zooming out a bit. So let's go back, not entirely, because we want to make our zooming a little bit slower. Yeah, that'll do. Let's move across a bit more, and by this point we want to be totally zoomed out. So let's make it another keyframe there. So I'm clicking just between these two arrows here is the button to create keyframes. And at this point, we want to be back to our regular zoom. Along with our zooming, we also want to do some panning. And I'm going to use this go to previous keyframe and go back to the first keyframe for the scale. Okay, and at this point, I also want to create a keyframe for position for our panning. So I click that and creates a keyframe there. Okay, now at this point, we want to start panning, I guess, diagonally to the right to get rid of some of this black space. I just drag these a bit to get it right and go up a bit. And I'll probably want to, now I want to go to the next keyframe again. So I'll clicking on the go to next keyframe for the scale, because that's where also where I want to change my position as well. So click create another keyframe there. Okay, at this point, well, it's back to, I guess, the original view before we messed around with the scale and position. And I'll just type in there 240 and just want to get rid of this black down the bottom now. So there we go. I've actually got some black at the top here. So this isn't the perfect pan and zoom, but you get the idea of what we're doing now. And actually, because we don't really want those black spaces, I'll start going up, but they're there anyway. Okay, so that is panning and zooming, and I'll just save that. And let's run it and see what it looks like. Okay. So that's a basic panning and zooming. It's not that pronounced. You could probably start maybe at 150. Let's do that. So we're going to go back to the first keyframe. Just to make sure you're actually on the right keyframe, just use these arrows. That's the safest thing to do. And I'm going to start a bit more zoomed in, 150. And position at this point, we might actually start a little bit lower. Okay. Just make sure we're actually on that keyframe. Okay. And we'll go to the next keyframe and probably just zoom just to demonstrate. We want to zoom more to the right. Let's go to the next keyframe just so our panning and zooming is a bit more pronounced, even though we're going to end up with more black on this. Okay, so just we'll play that again now, and the panning and zooming should be a bit more pronounced.